The NFL draft is just 1 week away. And let's be honest with ourselves. We don't want to be sitting there watching the draft with no action on it. Stay tuned for our 2025 NFL Draft Best Bets. Welcome, football fans, to another edition of IDP Plus Bets. What is up, folks? I'm one of your hosts here, the DGen Doc. And more importantly, I'm joined by my brother in degeneracy, Mr. Derek Bennett, a.k.a. Professor Locks. How we doing tonight, brother?
Doing good. It's starting to warm up outside. Draft's right around the corner. Football's almost here. Usually, I am like locked in to the draft. I absolutely love draft time. Like way back, in high school, in college, I jump on Madden and just do like fantasy drafts for like dynasty mode all the fucking time. And yeah, I love draft time, but I have no fucking clue what the hell's gonna go on.
Oh, wow. What
in a
a
week
good
from now.
introduction to the episode where we're going to be giving out our best bets for the draft. So, yeah, now if anybody
I
wasn't
have
convinced,
I have some things that I have money on. Don't get me wrong. But it just seems like this draft, for whatever reason, there's going to be some moving going on. There's
yeah.
going to be some chaos. Maybe not quite like last year with Michael Penix. Penix, whatever his name is.
Yes, Atlanta really
Atlanta,
opened up that can of worms. Look,
yeah.
I think this brings us to a good point. One, I'm with you. I think this draft is wide open. Outside of the number one pick, I think it really could be anything. And this
Yep.
brings me into another point. All right, we are going to be giving out our NFL draft best bets. We're going to be talking about things. We're going to be getting some action. This is a good time to remind people as well about bankroll management and not blowing your load just at the first sign of football, right? Just like week one, you want to be smart. I would not advise you to bet a normal, UFL side bet, a normal unit on each of these bets. We are literally betting on what a bunch of old dudes think, right? I mean, as we saw last year, a la the Atlanta Falcons, they could do whatever the hell they want to do,
Yep.
right? So don't, there is no lock, just like there's no locks in sports betting, especially with these. Like, I feel the same about awards, anything where it's not the play on the field. Like, you are just kind of betting on what somebody thinks and what might happen. And then one trade, your entire mock draft is messed up. So that's just saying, I will be betting on the NFL draft. I'll be betting on
But
picks to give out.
we
But
can take advantage of some old dudes that tend to have a history,
yes,
you know.
I think logic, you can't just go straight logic, right?
Yeah.
Or what
Oh
you
yeah.
think. Obviously, you're going to have some personal bias, but you are not in the organization, not in the decision making room.
No doubt.
And you might be right. You might know this is a better prospect, but some of these teams don't give a shit, man. You got fan pressure. You've got old, owners who are decaying and wanting to see things happen a little bit sooner,
Yeah.
not to name any names, but I just think that you got to be a little careful. But as Derek's pointed out, it does create a good opportunity. So that's why, at least for my side, we're going to each give out 6 bets, really, 5, one long shot. We're going to each give out a couple bets here tonight. And for me, I will not be taking anything with the minus sign in any of these bets. I think that I
Okay.
don't feel strongly enough, and I'm not laying, minus 200 to 1 on Cam Ward to go number one. I think
Yeah, I'm
that,
not either. I just had to look real quick, but yeah, I don't have any minus signs either.
I mean, it's just not. I don't know how you can feel that confident outside of Cam Ward going to 1.
That's fair.
So yeah. All right, man. Let's talk about this draft here. This is our order. As a reminder, we will be referencing back to the draft order, unless I know some of you may have memorized where your team is, but if you've memorized where all 32, good on you. This is the first draft in a couple of years where all 32 teams do have a first round pick. Now, whether they use that pick or not, we'll see. We were talking offline about some trade potential, absolutely. Some chaos potential, absolutely. But right now, every team's got a pick, so
Yep.
we will see. Other thing I want to kind of get your opinion on here is the draft attendees.
Ooh.
So immediately, gut reaction, like it came out, and I was like, "Damn, that's not a lot of guys," because we're used to kind of the glory days of like there being a shit ton of people there,
Yeah,
right?
like 25, 30 dudes.
Right. And then last year, there was only 12. which I thought was
Mhm.
super weird. So I guess this is even more
Yeah.
than last year. But 17 dudes. Anyone you're surprised that they're going or shocked that they're not going, maybe?
Yeah, I mean, Jalen Milroe, I know everybody thinks that he's an incredible athlete, and he is. But is he a first round, maybe even second round quarterback? I don't know.
Not a guarantee for damn sure.
We all know that quarterbacks always get a little bit of a bump when it comes to draft time. They have a
Yeah.
second round grade, but then they end up getting drafted 10 overall, whatever that is. I don't think anybody would have expected Bo Nix to go in the top 15, and there he was.
Yeah.
So I think Jalen Milroe is probably the biggest surprise. Mason Graham's kind of surprising as well. To be honest, he's kind of that fringe, late first, maybe second round.
Wow. Wow.
But
We're not even in the season, and then the Ohio State bias is coming out. Yes, that was a joke for everyone. Uh, you know, yeah, I don't know. I guess Michigan will have a player drafted before Ohio State, but we'll see.
I would,
Uh,
I would, I would think so. Any guys on there that was surprising for you?
Yeah, I think guys, there are a lot of these guys that make sense. Some guys I could see not falling out, but Milroe I think is the biggest one that jumps off the
Yeah,
page. But him
yeah,
being a quarterback, I think helps that. But
yeah.
guys like Shamar Stewart, who we talked about last week, so we did a NFL rookies injury deep dive. We went through guys with
Mhm.
major injury concerns, right? The fact that he's got those stress fracture, rod in the foot, didn't really work type deal. Excuse me. I would not be surprised if he drops out of the first round.
Sure.
Also, a guy like Malachi Starks, I think just the safety position.
Yep.
There's not a clear number one safety, which I'll talk about here in a little bit. Those guys, I think they're taking a little bit of a risk. Even Tet McMillan, a guy who was
Yeah.
like the next guy, and I feel like all offseason, all we heard is bad things.
Right.
So yeah, I think those guys come to mind. Everyone else kind of makes sense. But I don't blame these kids really, take an opportunity if they're invited to go to the draft. It's got to be a sweet experience. You just don't want to end up like Aaron Rodgers or Will Levis with a picture of you looking sad
Right.
because you didn't get drafted. So if you don't get drafted, just be happy about it. You're going to play in the NFL and live out your dreams. You'll make plenty of money.
Mhm.
All right, man. You ready to get going?
Let's rock and roll.
All right, folks. This is the 2025 NFL Draft Best Bets DGen Docs edition. All right, so we're just gonna kind of go back and forth, giving out some of
One
our
for
bets
one.
here, giving out our reasoning. I will let you go first. I feel like I've been talking too much early in this episode, so why don't you go ahead and give out your first bet of the 2025 NFL Draft?
Yeah, so let's go to the running back room here because especially after this past year with Saquon having the year that he had, Derrick Henry having the year that he had, I think the running backs as a whole, I don't think it's necessarily a secret that this is a pretty deep running back draft.
Yep.
But at the same time, I think there's two guys that are higher than the rest, and that's Omarion Hampton and obviously
Ashton Jeanty.
Ashton Genty. Thank you. So we're kind of mentioning, this is a bunch of old dudes sitting in a boardroom making decisions, and I'm really thinking there's one old guy by the name of Jerry Jones that just loves to make splash decisions.
Okay, I think I know
And
where this is going. I kind of like where this is going.
And
Okay.
I think Omarion Hampton goes under 19 and a half because I
Okay.
think the Cowboys rush offense was absolutely
That was trash.
horrific. It
Yeah.
was it was absolutely trash. Once Dak went down, the passing offense obviously was going to take a hit.
Yeah.
But their running backs last year, nobody could get anything going. We had a 92-year-old Zeke. We had what's his name?
I know. I was just thinking. Oh
I
my
c
goodness. I'm out of.
anyways,
I'm
they
out of
didn't they
form.
didn't
I'll
have a they
find
didn't
it
have
for
a
us because it's
exactly,
gonna bother me.
right. But anyways,
But go ahead.
they didn't have a feature back. So I
Yeah.
think, them sitting there, at what, 12? Yeah, 12. I think that's a perfect time for Omarion Hampton to come off the board. There's a few other teams around that spot too. The Bears could use a running back. Who knows what Miami might do? I mean, um, they like to load up with running backs as well. But I really think the Cowboys is a nice spot for Omarion Hampton to come off the board there. They're at 12. So I am going under 18.5 for him, and that's
Yeah.
plus 105.
Plus 105. Okay, nice little plus money there. Yeah, so the guy we were thinking of was Rico Dowdle, who did put up a
Oh, just
thousand
kidding.
yards for them.
Plus 180. Plus 180. Just kidding.
There you go. Plus 180. Marion Hampton under 18.5. Rico Dowdle was the name it was both evading us.
There we
He
go.
did put up 1,000 yards, weirdly.
Really?
But
Okay.
he's not on the roster anymore. Javonte
True.
Williams and Miles Sanders are currently their RBs right now. So not anything, super exciting again. So I like that. I think they do go playmaker there. I thought you were going to actually, so full transparency, we do not go over our bets really ever, because we don't want to be influencing each other before the show.
Yeah.
I thought you were going to go Travion Henderson there as like a real splash, the
Ooh.
speedster there for Ohio State. But I like the Omarion Hampton. I think they do go playmaker. So I think at the plus 180 price, he's probably got a because I agree with you. It's Jeanty, it's Hampton, and then there's a pretty decent drop off.
Yeah.
And like you said, running backs matter now with Saquon and Derrick Henry again. So I think you're right. I think there's some owners out there that saw that and are like, hey, maybe we should follow
Let's
that
go
model.
get a dude. Right.
I like that. All right, my first play here.
Or just off of that, you have the Steelers sitting there at 21. Again, lost Najee to the Chargers. They may be looking at running backs as too. If there's somebody kind of mid-20s that may want to jump up for him, it might be another option.
That's not true. Yeah, that's not bad. Yeah, them sneaking up in there. I'm gonna go with a little bit of a fade of a position group here.
Okay.
I think in this draft, especially, I kind of talked about it at the top, but there's not really like a lock generational, like great wide receiver talent in this class. I think it's a bit lacking. I think there's some guys, 4 or 5 guys that have the potential to be quality starters, maybe Pro Bowl type guys eventually, but there's no like, definitely I can 100% say these guys are getting drafted in the first round. Obviously, Tet McMillan and Matthew Golden are the top 2. So my bet here is total wide receivers drafted in the first round under 2.5 at plus 185. I wouldn't even be shocked if there's just one that goes, right? Yeah. I think it's between McMillan, Golden, and Emeka Ibuka. Obviously Luther Burden could sneak in there, but Golden is kind of somebody who has been like the analytics lovebird. Yep. He tested out super well. He ran, what that 4.29 or whatever it was. He's a blazer, but he's a guy who he didn't have the production to kind of back up that. And then you have McMillan, who was very productive at Arizona. They're going to question, the mostly Pac-12, now Big 12 defense he was going against. Yep. They're going to question, I feel like all offseason, the video of him surfacing about him not wanting to watch film, although it was his freshman year, has been going around. Metrics-wise, separation-wise, he doesn't get the most separation. He's kind of just a bigger target. He's got a great catch radius, but I just don't love this wide receiver class. I think you got a lot of edge rushers. Quarterbacks are going to sneak their way in there. I think the running back class is stronger. You're always going to get some offensive linemen, tight ends. Like I just think it's one of the weakest position groups as a draft class. So to get the plus 185 there, I'm going to go with under 2.5 wide receivers taken.
Now, just to clarify, most books are considering Travis Hunter as a cornerback, correct?
Yes, in this book. So mine are all going to come from DraftKings. Is where all I'm coming from. So yeah, they consider him a cornerback. So you are correct. So it would have to be non-excluding Travis Hunter, 3 other wide receivers taken in the first round.
Yep.
Appreciate that. Yeah, that's a good call to go ahead. All right. Next up, what do you got for the people?
Yeah, so I'll kind of go off of the same line of thinking, different guy, different under pick. But I'm going to go Jahdae Barron under 18.5. So I think I said 18.5 for Omarion Hampton. He's 19.5. So Jahdae Barron, 18.5 at plus 175. He's probably the second best corner. Maybe Will Johnson, you could throw him in there after Travis Hunter. And we just know that, this is still probably a passing league, right? Even though the Eagles went out and won the Super Bowl by pounding the rock, the NFL is still a passing league.
Well, they
And
did it behind two great cornerback play, right? That
that's
allowed them
true.
to rush the passer,
That's
but keep
true.
going.
But yeah, I mean, I think if you can get one of those guys that can lock down one side of the field, you might as well go ahead and get him. And Jade Barron is known to be able to play all kinds of different coverages in terms of man versus zone and things like that. So
Mhm.
give me Jade Barron going under 18.5.
Yeah. No, I like that. And we talked about it on the show, but the Will Johnson, he does have that injury stigma,
Yeah.
missing most of the season, then dealing with the hamstring injury, so he couldn't run at the pro day type deal. Well, we kind of talked about the injuries itself are not too concerning.
Yep.
So, but from again, an old guy who sees injury, maybe the medical team isn't briefing him fully, or he just doesn't trust them.
Yep.
So I've heard some people think Barron could go ahead of Johnson. And I think a lot of teams need good cornerbacks in this draft, especially
Okay.
early. So I really like that play with Jade Barron there. All right, my second pick, Jaxon Dart to go in the top 10 at plus
Ooh.
250.
Okay.
So look, this drafts these numbers always changing. So you do want to shop around because he's plus 200 only to be the second quarterback selected, or to go in front of Shadur essentially after
Yep.
Cam Ward. I mean, I think there's a chance there's three quarterbacks in the top 10. We saw what happened last year. They were like, oh, there's really only three locks, and then we had six quarterbacks or something like that.
Yeah. Especially with the Derek Carr news breaking this
Yep,
past week.
exactly.
That opens up the Saints. They're
I
right there
mean,
at 9.
yeah, which we can talk about for a second. He's apparently considering shoulder surgery on a lingering issue, probably either labral tear or maybe an AC type deal,
Yep.
something where you could get it done, maybe not required. But it sounds like he's using this as leverage to get out of his contract. I don't know. There's a lot of going on there.
Kind of a strange situation.
Yeah, very strange. But they got Kellen Mond coming over there from the Eagles. So I could definitely see them. But really, okay. So outside of the Titans, I think we can safely say they're going Cam Ward. But
Mhm.
I mean, even including the Titans, I think there's 8 teams in the top 10 where if they went quarterback, I would not be shocked. I think, Tennessee
Yep.
definitely needs a quarterback, right? Obviously, probably Cam Ward. Cleveland needs a quarterback. The Giants need a quarterback. Jacksonville, I know they just played Trevor Lawrence, so I'm just not sold on Trevor Lawrence. The Raiders, Geno Smith, I don't know if that's a long-term solution. Justin Fields with the Jets, definitely not a long-term solution. Bryce Young, I don't know if he's a long-term solution. We talked about the Saints. The only other teams I think definitely are out are the Patriots and the Bears.
Yep.
There's also teams like maybe the Rams, some of these other teams that could trade into the top 10 that really, if they really like Jaxon Dart, I think he's more of your prototypical QB prospect as opposed to Shedeur Sanders. Played in the SEC. I think that helps him out there. And it's just a quarterback, man. I don't know if I don't think he's a top 10 talent.
Yeah.
But he plays a position that's at a premium in this league. So give me Jaxon Dart, top 10, plus 250. I think there's a lot of landing spots that he could go, or a team could trade up and go get him. So that's where I'm going with there. All right. We are going to move on. But before we do that, I got to tell you guys about some of our awesome sponsors, starting with Fast Draft. That's right. We're talking draft. And if you want to get in on this draft action, you want to show these NFL GMs and these coaches how it's done, head on over to Fast Draft Fantasy. Fast Draft Fantasy, they do best ball, they do DFS. Okay, I get it. Look, Doc, there's a lot of sites that do that. But there's 2 key separators here with Fast Draft. The first, it's in the name. It's a fast draft. No more waiting on people to take 60 seconds, 90 seconds, 2 minutes to draft to now I got to spend 30 minutes doing a draft. No, I know the guys I want to draft, 20-second draft clocks. These drafts are all done in under 10 minutes, typically around the 6 or 7 minute mark. They've also got this cool feature with boosts that allow you to apply different multipliers to players all the way up till NFL kickoff. So you can draft today and maybe some things change around. And the way you kind of have some flexibility in your lineup is, hey, this guy's moved up my board. Maybe I put a 2X on top of him. Maybe Jaxon Dart's won the starting quarterback position. So in my rookie draft, I want to 2X his points, things like that. So go over to Fast Draft and plus use promo code plus DGen Doc and get $50 for free. That's right. You deposit $50, you get $50. And who does not love free money? All right. I also want to tell you about idpplus.com. Head on over to our website. We're running a promo IDP 2025, all caps, all one word. Biggest deal ever. 50% off every package on idpplus.com. And you better get in soon because that deal ends on May the 1st. And last but not least, one of the best things about the offseason is the Fantasy Football Expo. Get your Fantasy Football Expo tickets today at thefantasyfootballexpo.com. All right, my friend. Pick number 3 for you. What is another bet for this 2025 NFL Draft?
Yeah, I'm going to shift over to a pretty prominent position group in this draft. There's a lot of defensive linemen that people think pretty highly of, and I think that's actually going to work against them in the first round. I think teams are going to wait on defensive linemen and edge rushers a little bit because there's so many of them. It's like, we can pick one of these guys up in the second, maybe the third, because the position is just so deep. So I'm going under 8.5 defensive linemen / edges in the first round at plus 145.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. So we're fading that. So you said under the edge position, so you're fading them?
Under 8.5. Yeah. I just think that teams will end up waiting on some of these edge guys and D tackles and things like that, rather than picking them up in the first round, maybe picking a wide receiver or a tight end or something like that in the first round. That there's some really high level guys in terms of the tight ends or wide receivers that there's just not very many.
Yeah, that's an
Guys
interesting way to look at it because everyone's saying, the draft class is so deep at that position, so there's going to be a ton of picks there. But you're right. I mean, if it's so deep, then I can wait. I don't have to go get the guy, like you said, a Colston Loveland or a Tyler Warren or a Gene T or a
cornerback,
Omarion Hampton.
or maybe we do take Campbell in the first round as a linebacker and then come back around or D tackle in the second.
Yeah. No, I like that play. Yeah, a little bit contrarian, but I like the reasoning there. Again, nothing's guaranteed in the draft, guys. All right. Speaking of that, I'm going to go with pick number 2, Abdul Carter at plus 230 for the Cleveland Browns. A couple weeks ago, Carter was like the favorite because there was a report. Schefter said, hey, he's likely to go to the Browns. They're going to match him up with Myles Garrett, blah, blah. And then Schefter then tweets out, like, now it looks like Travis Hunter is going to be picked. They don't fucking know.
Nope.
And that's why these prices change so much, because one mock draft, someone says something, I was just looking at, the roster construction here. And if we take a look at the Cleveland Browns and obviously their defense here, to me, I think, D-line makes a lot more sense than cornerback. So obviously they've got Myles Garrett. But outside of Myles Garrett on the D-line, they have Malik Collins, Shelby Harris, Isaiah McGuire. I mean, none of those names do anything for me.
Sure.
In their secondary, they have Denzel Ward, Grant Delpit, Martin Emerson, Hickman, and Greg Newsome. Really, Ward, Delpit, and Newsome, right? All in their secondary. That's a strong unit already. I think pairing Abdul Carter with Myles Garrett immediately makes your defense much better.
Sounds
right?
pretty scary to me, to be honest.
Yeah, like
guy.
Yeah, I mean, come on, you can't double them both, right?
Yep.
I think they would be silly to not play behind their defense. They've already got decent cornerbacks. Let those edge rushers create chaos, and then figure out, what you're gonna do, run the ball, whatever you want to do there. But I like Carter at plus 230. I just think it's a lot more of a toss up. And to get a plus 230 price, I will definitely take a stab there at Carter at 2.
Now, the only thing that I'm not sure with your reasoning there is that they had 2 pretty solid edge rushers this past season with Myles Garrett and Zadarius Smith.
Yeah.
That didn't work out.
True.
Part of that was because, the team as a whole started to crumble. They started losing and ended up trading Zadarius Smith away. I wouldn't be surprised if they went ahead and took Travis Hunter and then and actually played him both ways.
I I mean,
as
yeah,
wide receiver
he's
and a corner.
definitely the favorite, right? He's the chalk.
But
In my head, I think
I
Abdul
also
Carter
I
is.
completely agree with you. From a cornerback standpoint,
Yeah,
they're pretty loaded.
I think team needs wise, I think he just makes a lot more sense. Darius Smith no longer on the roster, and I think
Yep.
Abdul Carter's one of those guys that could really, really be like a franchise edge rusher guy who
Yeah.
could make a difference. So, but look, Travis Hunter, Abdul Carter, I don't think you can go wrong with either of those guys because Giants hopefully are getting one of them. So
Sure.
that's where I'm going. All right, what's number 4?
So I will stick with your Abdul Carter, but mine's a little different, and I'm kind of pairing two different bets with this one. So I
Okay,
have Abdul Carter going number 4 to the Patriots at plus 600,
okay.
mainly because I do think Travis Hunter goes 2, and I
Oh, geez.
think the Giants end up going Shadur Sanders
Oh
as
boy.
at number 3. I think obviously they brought in Russ, they brought in Jameis. Neither of those guys are long-term options. Um, and they did bring in a bunch of a bunch of quarterbacks this past week. Going way back when, 2-3 months ago, there was a lot of Shadur Sanders talk, going second to the Browns, third to the Giants. For
Yep.
whatever reason, that's fallen off, and now he's going like 30th in the
Yeah.
draft for whatever fucking reason. I don't completely understand it.
Yeah.
Um, but I do think Shadur is going to go at 3, so I have him at 3 at plus 475 as well.
Well, look, as my co-host and my good friend, I don't root against many bets, but I will absolutely be rooting against that one because if the Giants do reach and take Shadur Sanders at 3, the whiskey will be flowing
Well,
pretty heavily.
to go back
Uh,
to your earlier point, I didn't throw a whole unit on both of those. I split one.
oh,
Um,
thank you. Oh, yes, that makes me feel much better. Yes, yes,
yeah,
yes. All right. Well, okay. Next one up for me. Armand Membou under 6.5 at plus 300 at 3 to 1.
yeah,
Um,
I like that one.
I think he's the best prospect offensive tackle wise, right? I think
Yeah,
he's got the best metrics. He tested out the best. He was a 3-year starter in the SEC
yeah,
at Mizzou. I know, obviously, Will Campbell's the guy he's really kind of up against there
yeah.
over at LSU. But people are talking about the arm thing, whatever. But even still, I think even if New England does go Campbell at 4, I think
Mhm.
there's 3 teams, 4, 5, and 6 that all need offensive line that we don't know what they're going to do, right?
Sure.
So Patriots need it for sure. Jacksonville had a terrible offensive line, and you're talking about wanting to
Yep.
invest in your quarterback in Goldilocks, Trevor Lawrence, whatever flavor you want to call him. Um, you got to build up the O line, right?
Yeah.
I know it's not the sexy pick, but I mean, they're also the other one they're talking about is Mason Graham or Jalen Carter or Jalen, excuse me, Walker.
Yep.
But I think Membou, he's a great prospect. I think he's the best true tackle prospect that there is in this draft, and everybody needs an offensive tackle, man. And then finish that off, Las Vegas. Their offensive line, Colton Miller, their left tackle, is holding out right now, trying to get a contract. I
Yep.
mean, all of these teams are in desperate need of solid O linemen. If you can get the best O lineman in the draft, I think you have to take them. So give
Yep.
me Membou, and at 3 to 1,
Yeah.
I don't understand how.
I like that.
Again, you know, the Patriots need to go offensive line. So the fact that they're that locked into Will Campbell to me is a little bit puzzling. And
Yep.
then Jacksonville and Las Vegas, nobody knows what they're going to do. Nobody does. And
Nope.
a great way to ensure that your team is going to be better is to take the best offensive line
And,
prospect in the draft.
and we
So,
just saw this in the Super Bowl.
yeah.
Philly had the best offensive line by far in the
Yep.
league, and it's a copycat league. So I completely agree with you. I think offensive tackles will be flying off the board
Yeah.
throughout round 1. I think there will be probably 4 or 5 of them come off the board.
Yeah. So that's where I'm going there. All right. You gave out how many you have? One left?
I have 2 left actually.
Oh, okay. So go ahead and go ahead and roll with your 2.
Yeah.
Or your
So
next one. I've got 2
so
left
you
too.
mentioned Jalen Walker. I think he ends up going number 8 to the Carolina Panthers.
I can see that.
The
Yep.
Panthers defense is awful still, especially their front seven.
Not good.
So I do think they pick up an edge rusher out of Georgia and Jalen
I like that.
Walker that should be able to give them that boost and get after the quarterback that they've been looking for.
Yeah.
And then my last, and that one's at plus 150 for Jalen Walker to go in
Well,
the
hold
number 8
off
spot.
there because I've still got 2 left. So
Okay,
hold off on giving out your 2. But I like Walker. I think he's a good prospect. I mean,
I do too.
as much as I hate to say it as a Gators fan, Georgia edge rushers, Georgia's defensive line has been. I mean, they're taking over the league, man.
Yep,
They've just been studs. I
yep.
don't think you can go wrong there. So, all right, similar trenches talk. Give me the Indianapolis Colts, first player drafted to be an offensive lineman at plus 270.
Mm,
I don't know right now. The chalk at plus 100 is tight end. I'm not quite sure. I'm assuming what people think Colston Loveland,
Colston
maybe
Loveland
Tyler
probably.
Warren. I don't know if Warren's going to be at 14 or Warren at 14. I think is a little bit of a stretch
Yep.
as far as him being there. But I don't know why it's locked in that they're going tight end. Look at this team. I mean, the roster makeup, right? Their current offensive line, outside of Braden Smith and Quentin Williams or
Mhm.
Quentin Nelson,
Quentin
excuse
Nelson.
me, is just awful. I mean, let's go through the names. So, left tackle Bernard Raymond, center Taylor Bartolini, and right guard Dalton Tucker. I watch a lot of football. I haven't heard of those dudes.
Yeah.
And when we talk about this team, like you look at your quarterbacks, you have Daniel Jones
Mhm.
and Anthony Richardson.
Yep.
The best thing you can do is become a run heavy team that incorporates the quarterback run.
Yep.
Whether you start Daniel Jones or whether you start Anthony Richardson, you must use the quarterback's legs and lean on the run game. I mean, you have Michael Pittman, you have Josh Downs, you have A.T. Mitchell, you have Alec Pierce. They struggle to get them the ball. Andy
Yep.
Richardson, why do we need a tight end? Why do we need a pass catching tight end? No, you need to be able to run the ball. So I think that they get back to their roots a little bit where they were actually a decent team and they go offensive lineman there at plus 270. I also think, outside of Loveland and Warren, Loveland's got the injury concerns right now. And 14 might be a little bit high for them. I think Warren's
Mhm.
going to be gone by the time he gets there. So I don't think it's a lock that they're going to just fall in love with Colston Loveland there. And who's to say another team like the Chargers and Harbaugh don't go get him earlier. So I think that, the Colts are also notorious for trading back out of the first round and making that happen. So I
Yep.
just think that they ultimately go offensive lineman with their first pick. All right, brother, your last NFL draft bet of the 2025 season here.
Yeah. So I'm gonna kind of double down on my under defensive lineman pick. So give me over 15 and a half total offensive players
Okay.
selected in the
Yep.
first round. I think, like I mentioned earlier, I think the wide receiver position, there aren't too many absolute studs, and teams will want to grab the guys that are there.
Yep.
We talked about how many offensive linemen we think could be potentially coming off. They're probably going to be 5 or 6 of them.
Yep.
Quarterbacks, again, teams will come back up into the first round to
Always.
get their quarterback, right? So whether there's 3, again, Jalen Milroe's been invited to attend the draft for a reason. Somebody knows something, in
Yeah.
my
Yeah.
opinion. So could we see 4 quarterbacks go in the first round? Potentially. So give me 15 and a half offensive players at plus 105. That's probably the one I feel the best about.
Yeah, no, I think the quarterbacks and running backs save you. I agree. I would not be shocked if we do see 4, whether it's a guy like Milroe or Tyler Shuck or
Yeah.
whatever, sneaks in there at the end or something.
Yep.
Also the running backs, Travion Henderson, I could see him. There's a lot of good running backs. I would not be
Mhm.
surprised, even the guys like LaQuinn Allen or
Yep. We,
somebody.
we always see runs on certain positions, and I think whether it is a thin wide receiver group and Luther Burden jumps up in the first round,
Yeah.
or I can't remember what his name is, but the tight end out of Bowling Green, who's an
Oh,
absolute
Harold Fannin.
yeah,
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
an absolute stud.
Yeah.
Somebody jumps up
I
there
can see that.
to grab
Yeah.
him.
Yeah.
I
No,
think
I can
just
see it.
defensive players. It just seems like those position groups are pretty deep,
Yeah.
and I think that teams will end up waiting around and getting guys in the second, third.
Yeah, no, I like it. I like it there, especially at the plus money. All right, my last one is a long shot. It's going to be centered around the safety position, which is always a wild card every year, and it
Yep.
doesn't have to be in the first round. It is the first safety picked. Notre Dame
Ooh.
product, Xavier Watts,
Ah,
45-1.
okay.
Obviously, it's a 45-1, but a lot of people, like you and I, watched the college football national championship and the
Sure
college
did.
football playoffs. The best player on the Notre Dame defense was Xavier Watts.
Yes.
One of the biggest stories coming into the game with Ohio State was Xavier Watts on one side and Caleb Downs on the other side,
Mhm.
right? And I mean, Malachi Starks and the guy out of South
North
Carolina, who I
Carolina.
would butcher his name, so I'm not even going to try it out of respect. But those guys are get it, are 1 and 2. Malachi, like
Yeah.
they've
I think
neither
I
of
think
those guys are separating for me.
yeah.
Why are they so much above Xavier Watts, who was widely renowned as one of the best safeties in college football last year?
Yeah. I mean,
You
I
know,
think he has 13 interceptions over the last 2 years, and he's a safety coming out of Notre Dame. It's not like it's a safety coming out of Syracuse,
yeah.
you know?
I mean, compared to like South Carolina and Georgia, I get it. Georgia defense is whatever,
Yeah.
but Malachi Starks was never the best player on this defense.
Right.
At any point in his career, right? And I know he had a great team, but I think Xavier Watts was the leader of that defense. I mean, they just saw for a GM to have watched that college football playoff run and national championship, and see Watts make plays all over the field. To convince me that someone falls in love with him doesn't have to be the first round. Even there's a good chance there's no safeties drafted in the first round, right? It could be early in the second round, whatever. I think Watts is a guy that a GM or coach can fall in love with. And at 45-1, I just don't think there's this massive gap between Starks and the South Carolina product there.
Agreed.
So, yeah, give me Watts 45-1. It's a wild card position. I just think that there is absolute value there for Xavier Watts. And that is how I will wrap up the best bets. Now, why don't we talk this as we round out this show? Is there any guys? We talked a lot of first round stuff.
Yeah.
Is there any sleepers you could see? Maybe we move more into fantasy, not merely the betting space for the deep guys, but any sleepers in this draft that you have your eye on as we kind of turn towards the fantasy page here for next season?
Yeah, I don't know if it's necessarily a sleeper, but Caleb Johnson, running back out of Iowa, is an absolute dog. This dude
Yes.
will just run people over, and
Yep.
he was Iowa's offense. I mean,
Yep.
Iowa's offense is horrible.
Yep.
He's a guy that you could hand the ball off 20, 25 times, and he'll tote the rock and get 3 yards in a cloud of dust. But I think that's the league is starting. It's still a passing league, but it's starting to bring the running back position back into its glory days. And Caleb Johnson is just kind of that prototypical running back that's just full steam ahead. He's a 3 down back. He's not the best receiving back, but I think for a guy that, like I said, can handle the load of carries, getting Caleb Johnson kind of end a second, early third round, whatever team it is going to get an absolute stud.
Yeah, no, Caleb John. I mean, if you watch Iowa play, you're right. Like he was Iowa's offense, right? An offense that scored a little bit more points than we're used to them seeing.
A little bit.
But yeah, he is an absolute stud there. Really quickly before we move on, Nick Amonwori is going to be my best attempt there, just to give him a shout out.
He's good.
Is a good player. Don't want him to. Don't
He's a
want to
good
put.
player, and that was a good attempt by you.
I don't want to put
I'm proud of you.
disrespect on a name that I didn't at least attempt. So, all right, yeah, one of my guys that I'm thinking about sleeper wise. How many you have in mind?
He's the one. I have one other guy that at the running back
All
spot that
right,
I
I will
think
throw out
can
two
pop.
wide receivers that are sleepers for me. A little bit of smaller school products, but first one is Torrey Horton out of Colorado State.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we saw him what he did against Colorado in that game, but dude's a just absolute stud.
Yeah.
I think that he's a guy that's going to transfer very well to the NFL. I think he's a guy that's going to go obviously day 2, day 3. That a team can really get a starting caliber guy who's going to make an impact. if he goes to the right place. So I really like Torrey Horton there. And then a guy, Ricky White out of UNLV, the running Rebs. He's just an absolute fantastic all-around football player. I mean, this is a guy that had 3 or 4 punt blocks as the leading wide receiver. I mean, he was a key piece. I mean, he was the whole passing game for UNLV, a UNLV team that was very close to making the playoff, taking Boise State on the ropes, twice really. So I think Ricky White and Torrey Horton are guys that come from smaller school products, but that can absolutely translate to the NFL and be very productive as soon as next season.
I like it. Yeah, the other running back that I really like is DJ Giddens out of Kansas State.
K-State,
I mean,
yeah.
he's a bigger back. I think he is he's a 6-foot guy that just has those long strides, kind of like a Derrick Henry, not quite as big as Derrick Henry, but nobody is. But this is a dude that ran a little bit faster than people, I think, expected at the combine. I'm not usually a big numbers guy, but when it comes to running backs, I do like some breakaway speed, and most NFL GMs do as well. But yeah, I do like DJ Giddens coming out of Kansas State. Fantasy.
I'll give you one running back, the guy that's pretty deep down there, but for me, Kyle Monungai out of Rutgers.
Yep, I like him too.
He's a tough dude, man. That Rutgers offenses were so bad. Those quarterbacks, like, just having bet on Rutgers, and oh my gosh, they were fucking terrible. Mm-hmm. But he was such a bright spot for them when everybody on the field, everybody in the stands, everybody watching on TV knew he was going to get the football 30, 40 times a game. And he still made it happen. I still remember 2 years ago.
Built like Genty, doesn't quite have the burst that Genty does, but he bounces off, dude, just like him.
Yeah, I mean, 2 years ago, I had a great time watching him run all over Miami in that bowl game a couple years ago. Man, he's a great football player to watch. So I think if he winds up on a roster, he can easily be a guy who, just works his way up, whether it's through injury or whether he goes to a team like, maybe the Cowboys don't get a splash, those running back by committee. I'm thinking of like Denver last season where they were just kind of rotating guys. I can see him absolutely, if he gets the opportunity, kind of taking over a little bit of an RB1 there later in the season. So those are our fantasy sleepers, a little bit of a nice tease to the fantasy season there. All right, folks, we are going to wrap this up now. If you haven't already, go ahead, check out. We've done some injury deep dives talking about specific players. We did Stephon Diggs. We did Dexter Lawrence. Then we switched and did an NFL rookies deep dive. Check those out, especially as we get closer and closer to fantasy season, draft season for yourself. Check out those prospects over on IDP Plus. Obviously, if you're wanting some action now, I'm doing my UFL breakdowns. Just good luck. Grab a drink because we're losing head coaches left and right in that league. But next week, we will be doing an NFL draft reaction show. We'll kind of grade out some winners and losers of the draft. Might be talking a little bit of futures now that we have a little bit more clarity of where these guys have been. So just stay tuned there. We're going to probably do something like that. But as always, we're bringing you football content 24/7. That's what we do here at IDP Plus. Anything for the good people before we get on out of here.
Yeah, as a newer show, if you have anybody that you want to learn more about from an injury standpoint, if you have anything football wise that you just want to know more about, we are more than happy to listen to any suggestions, any tips, whatever, because we're here for the people.
Yeah, it is the NFL offseason, so that means it's time for us to be creative. And it's always easy to be creative when we know people actually want to hear what we're talking about. So all right, folks, that was your NFL Draft 2025 Best Bets from Professor Locks and the DJ Doc here at IDP Plus Bets. We are out.
Thank you for watching the IDP Plus YouTube network. If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Be sure to tap the bell icon to get notified whenever we upload new content.